In this video, I'm going to show you how to make string lights or fairy lights using Sweep Mesh and Mesh. To start this off, I need to create an EP curve. So I'm going to click on spacebar and go to my any orthographic view, front or side. So I'm going to start with front and I'm going to create my EP curve tool. If you're putting this in a room, just match it up to whatever object you want to attach it to, and I'm going to use the EP curve tool to draw out a curve. And once I create the curve, I can click on enter, and I can also go to control vertex to control the points of the curve so that I get better shapes. And once you're happy with this curve, you can go back into object mode. You can go to your perspective view. If you need to move this around, usually you do. You don't want this curve to be completely flat in one of the axes, so you can move this around and edit it. I'm not going to do too much here, but once you're happy with that shape, you can go back to object mode and go to the modeling menu up top and go to create and sweep mesh. And that's going to create this sweep mesh shape. That's your wire for your string lights. You can reduce the scale of that and set the mode to EP so you get a smooth curve. You can also change the distribution. So if you turn on distribute, you can set scale the instances, maybe make them a little smaller actually. Let's try to make this a little smaller, scale them, and then we can twist them to get twisted wires. And once you have that, you can now create your lights. So to create the lights, I'm going to create a sphere. This is my start for the string lights, and I'm going to scale that down. And now I'm going to use mesh to attach it to the surface. So I'm going to go to the effects menu and go to mesh, create mesh network. And mesh will by default create a linear network where it creates 10 copies of that sphere all in a straight line. But if I go to my, if I select mesh on my outliner and go to the nodes of the mesh network in the attribute editor, I can click on curve and add a curve node. So now that'll help us distribute this mesh network across a curve. I'm going to go to my outliner and middle mouse click and drag to input that curve into the curve node. Once I do that, it does something. This is not exactly what we want. So I'm going to go to the step and change that. So I'm going to increase that step. And I'm also going to go back to the distribute node, change the distance x to 0, and maybe increase the number of points. And you may also want to move this lower. So depending on what kind of string lights you have, it may not look like this. You might also want to change your sweep mesh. So maybe your line is not wires, so you just have a single line, and you can reduce the scale of that so you don't see it as much. You could move these down, so you can go to your mesh one and you can add an offset node, so you can move these. So offset, add offset node, and I'm going to move this maybe on the y-axis, which is this way. So I'm going to go back to mesh 1 to my offset node and move it across the y-axis by -2. That's maybe a bit much. -0.2. Oh, -0.2. So just moved it a little lower so that instead of being right in between that those wires, it's a little bit below. I can move it a little more. So now I have my string lights, and now I need to make these into actual lights. So just in this case, I want to disconnect this from the mesh network. So I'm going to select my mesh that I've created and edit, delete by type history. When I delete the history, I can delete the mesh network as well. I don't need this anymore. And now I have my string lights. And to actually make them light up, you can go to Arnold, lights, and make sure you have these selected and go to Arnold, lights, and mesh light. And if you want individual lights, like if you want to control the brightness of each of those lights, which you might want to do, you'd have to separate these. But for me, I just want to add one mesh light, and I'm going to, once I have that, you can see that this is my mesh and these are my lights right inside that mesh. And I'm going to increase the exposure of those lights, set a color, let's say yellow, and I'm also going to make the light visible. And now when I render, I should be able to see these string lights. And I can add a background so we can actually see how they look. But basically, the mesh lights are usually not as good as Skydome lights or area lights, but they will still give you that string light look. And you can go in and edit those string lights. So if the exposure is a bit much, you can reduce that. And you can change that color. You can try turning the light off and see if that suits your look a little better. Let's increase that. So for string lights, it is likely that your lights do have to be visible because string lights are LEDs and you usually see them. So this is more of what you would want to see. And you can edit that exposure based on how much you want those lights to be visible in your scene.